Hi, we're Group 3 and our presentation is on metabolic birth defects.
To start off, genes are the basic physical and functional units of heredity. They are instructions to make molecules called proteins. Humans have about between 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Each person has 2 copies of each gene that are paternal and maternal. A genome is an organism of complete sets of DNA, including all of those genes. Each genome contains all of those information needed to build and maintain that organism.
In 2003, scientists completed an international collaboration where they mapped out the entire human genome, which includes its 3 billion base pairs. This had a huge impact on science and the field of medicine. It made researchers able to pinpoint specific birth defects and what gene they were related to. And since this release in 2003, more than 14,000 genetic diseases have been discovered.
So birth defects in general are structural and functional chromosomal abnormalities that can be measured in terms of physical, intellectual, and social well-being. One of these types of birth defects is metabolic birth defects. So we'll start with what is metabolism. Metabolism is a term that's used to describe all the chemical reaction involved in maintaining the living state of the cells and the organism. In the metabolism, food is converted to energy for all of the body's biological processes that happen throughout the day and throughout the lifetime. Metabolic birth defects are usually passed down from both the mother and the father through a recessive gene, which is called autosomal recessive inheritance. This means that the parents may not have shown symptoms and were instead carriers.
This inherited defective gene is responsible for producing certain enzymes. Because the body doesn't have this enzyme, it may not be able to break down toxic chemicals or produce necessary products for the body.
Metabolic diseases are broken down into 2 subcategories that affect the breakdown of amino acids, carbs, and lipids. The other subcategory is called mitochondrial disease, which is when the cells don't have energy to use oxygen, sugars, or fats. And because of this buildup, that ultimately damages the cell.
So metabolic diseases are relatively rare. They happen to about 1 in every 1,000 to 2,500 people, but most people do know if they have them.
Usually, metabolic birth defects are present at birth. They can be easily detected using routine screening. But if they're not detected at birth, symptoms are pretty obvious, so they can be easily diagnosed with a DNA or blood test.
Metabolic birth defects are usually not developed after birth, but if one of your organs do stop working, like the liver, you may develop that metabolic birth defect.
Like I said before, symptoms for metabolic birth defects are relatively easy to identify. Some common symptoms include lethargy, poor appetite, abdominal pains, vomiting, weight loss,
Jaundice, failure to gain weight and growth, developmental delay, seizures, coma, and abnormal odor of urine, sweat, and saliva.
So like any other disease, there's obviously an area that is studied on how to fix them or how to treat them. So with birth defects, biotechnology plays a huge role in this. And there's different aspects in terms of like treatments in biotechnology, such as gene therapy, which is when you clone a healthy copy of whatever the defective gene is, and then theoretically you implant that gene into the body, into the genome, and replace the defective one. And if the transplant is successful, it would cure the metabolic disease. It wouldn't. The downside of this is that it wouldn't reverse any physical effects it might have had, such as if you were missing a limb or had an extra limb. Like, it wouldn't change that. That's already happened. But it could reverse things like diabetes or Tay-Sachs disease. But gene therapy and other methods like this are still in the clinical trial stages, so it's all very tentative. So specifically relating to metabolic birth defects, there are two main types of genetic screening. One of them is newborn and the other is carrier.
So newborn screening is all newborns in the United States are screened for one of a small group of inborn errors of metabolism. Like Jocelyn mentioned, PKU is a common regularly newborn testing that is tested in every state.
So carrier screening has to do with someone goes to visit a genetic counselor. So they may find out through looking at their genome that they carry a recessive gene for a metabolic disorder, because not a lot of people that carry metabolic disorders don't know about it or don't show symptoms of it. So this doesn't necessarily mean that they need treatment or that they're not normal by say, but it could alter their opportunities if they want to have children or reproductive options.
This is a disorder that presents itself usually in newborns where the production of T4 is decreased, which is a hormone for the thyroid that's needed for myelination. Hypothyroidism can lead to a lowered IQ and various developmental issues, and is found in 85% of infants.
Another common type of metabolic disorder is called phenylketonuria, also known as PKU. This is a metabolic disorder where an inherited defective gene fails to produce enzymes needed to break down phenylalanine. The lack of this enzyme causes buildup of phenylalanine, which can be very dangerous when a person with PKU eats foods that are high in protein. This affects 1 out of every 10,000 babies in the United States, and this can be tested at birth with routine screening.
The last metabolic disorder that we're going to talk about today is galactosemia. Galactosemia is an autosomal recessive disorder that is characterized by an excess of galactose in the blood. Infants show signs of diarrhea and vomiting after ingesting anything with lactose. So as a result, there's a buildup of galactose in the blood. This can cause symptoms from failure to gain weight, decreased growth, hypoglycemia, seizures, blood infections, sepsis, cataracts, liver failure, or even death if left untreated. This can also produce a delay in growth or IQ, and there is genetic counseling available for this disorder.
We hope in the future that researchers will develop new methods to detect metabolic birth defects before they present themselves both at birth and prenatally.
We also hope that there will be more opportunity for treatment with gene therapy.
And through gene therapy, we hope that personalized medicine will be integrated in metabolic birth defects, specific cases, and general cases.